Nah, but yeah, I'm looking on Facebook right now. Facebook memories, bro. 11 years ago. 11 years ago. This time around, 11 years ago, we started college for the first time ever.
Damn.
Well, actually, well, no, because we took dual credit, right? You took dual credit classes?
Hmm. Yeah, bro. We
Yeah, we
were.
took dual, yeah, government. Was it good?
It
No, I
was.
mean,
It was economics. I
oh
took
yeah,
economics at Adamson, Joe.
yeah.
It was
That man, that
economics.
that that room was hot on the third floor. I remember, and man, poor professor. Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember
we all
that. But
passed.
we all passed.
We
We'll
all
we'll leave it
passed.
at that. We all passed that class for sure. But yeah, bro, 11 years ago we started. We started at I started at UT Dallas in Richardson, and you
A,
started out at
a poco sí, Joe? Wait, didn't we
yeah
start in 2009, Joe?
yeah '09. Yeah, so
10 years
exactly
ago,
11
it's 2010.
11 no 11 years ago, bro. 2009.
Oh shit, you did. Damn,
Yeah,
dude.
10 years. Yeah, that would have been 2019, but
20
11 years ago.
August. August. What the
Yeah,
hell today? August what? What's
August
today?
3rd, August 30th, man. Yeah, like
Wow.
I think we had just wrapped up. I think the first week of como se llama of school like at our respective schools because you left to A&M before though, no? Like
A week before.
a
So
week before.
yeah, this would have been the first week of classes, and then a
So
week before the
so a week
FOW.
ago, 11 years ago, that's when you traveled down to A&M. Because I remember when you left, because that weekend I had already moved in, and you had gone to North Park. You
Mm.
were in North Park buying like getting some last minute stuff I think before you took off to A&M. Because I remember meeting you in North Park. So I took the train from
Probably the
UTD.
phone. Probably a phone,
Yeah,
Joe.
I
Because
think it
that
was
was
the
the
phone.
first time that I got my phone.
Yeah. Well, that was that was. I remember that day because I was going through some stuff, right, and I went and
What
ran
stuff?
or some some at that point I thought it was like life stuff. Now it's very minuscule, very unimportant stuff.
Yeah, minuscule.
Pero como se llama? But I remember I had ran like I was running right, doing like venting my body, and I ran from and I regret this because I only did this one time and that was it because I ran from campus, which is a UTD, all the way to Arapahoe Station, and that's literally like an exit before Campbell off of 75. So it was like I don't know how many miles, but it was like an hour. And when you told me like, oh yeah, I'm wrapping up over here in North Park, and but I was like, I'll just go down there. And I remember taking the bus because the train and the bus take me there, the red line. So I remember doing that, getting off of Park Lane, meeting you there, and then because I think that day was the first time that was the first time I ever bought Aeropostale pants. I bought me some Aeropostale jeans, and then I bought me some white Nikes because I needed some shoes. I'm like, and that that reimbursement check hit, so we with that scholarship money, I bought some clothes.
Well, bro, we spend that money on school, Joe.
Right, that's why the clothes were for school because if
The
not, pues
clothes were for school.
me iban a dar en basketball
They'll
shorts
kick
and
you out, Joe.
right,
Naked, right? No education. No naked. No education.
naked, no education. Wait, so you're saying that's the first time you got your phone?
Yeah,
Like,
bro. Like before I left to college, that's like whenever I got a phone.
oh
I got
snap,
the Racer, the
the razor.
the T-Mobile Racer, bro. That shit was touchscreen, man. Like the it was a flip phone, but like
Yeah,
for the music and stuff, it was
the music,
touchscreen, bro.
man, that's crazy, bro. 11 years ago, man,
Got my
that
first phone.
that first phone, my first postal jeans that I purchased. The marca,
Yeah,
to be all fancy
Pichero
on campus,
Pasto.
right, man? Which is good though. Like that's a good segue into I think what we're gonna discuss today. But yeah, but I think we're ready to start, man.
Let's
So
do
you
it.
ready?
Let's
I'm
do it.
ready. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for episode 6 of Between Two Borders. My name is Joe Misael Posada Triana, and I have
Anacleto Giovanni Contreras.
there we go, man. Full name for both of us, and we'd like to thank each and every single one of you that's listening. We appreciate you all. We were looking at somewhere the people come from. We it's just been very very neat seeing that. Como se llama? But it's been good. This journey has been really great for us, especially for me because I really obviously if you haven't been able to tell, I love to talk, and unfortunately some of the stories that we share are the same stories that some of our students are showing and sharing with us, even in 2020, right? 11 years ago, we talk about how, we purchased our first phone, purchased my, what, like, traveling and going off to campus. Um, but I think it's a good way to kind of like channel into what we're going to talk about today, which is really just kind of like understanding like our collegiate experiences, but through the lens of man, like poor, being poor, right? And guess that. So like, what is that? What is being poor? Because yeah, man. Did you ever feel you were poor before you started college?
Bro. Talking about that phone, you have kids nowadays with a brand new iPhone in elementary school, Joe. So comparing myself to these kids nowadays, Joe, like, damn, dude, I was poor. I'm getting a phone my senior year, about to go to college,
Grad,
and this kid's, coming with a better phone than me. It's like, dang, man. I guess you ain't poor.
right? But I mean, that's like, but that's the perspective, right? Because I mean, I feel like
Yeah.
back then, like we didn't. I mean, because man, it wasn't freshman year. I want to say I still had a prepaid phone in high school. Like it was a little Nokia brick phone.
Say,
I
well,
still have
bro,
it
what's
too.
prepaid, Joe? What's
Right,
prepaid?
prepaid is where you pay before, so you can have. So I would pay for my minutes, and I mean, prepaid is interesting enough. It still exists right now, like
Oh,
for
yeah.
people that are just kind of needed. But like oftentimes now you have unlimited everything. Like literally, my plan, like the plan that I have with AT&T, like it really was grandfathered in. Before I finally upgraded after like 10 years actually. But yeah, man, but like starting freshman year, I remember having my prepaid phone. So literally we would pay $30, I don't know, a month, to get like 300 text messages, or I forgot, it was either 300 text messages or 300 text messages and or 300 phone minutes.
Mhm.
Because back then you had to count your minutes. And even when I transitioned over to a Sprint phone, I had a flip phone, Sprint phone, but the minute was limited. So I didn't even have. I only had like maybe. I think the plan came with 100 text messages for the month,
Mm.
and I was like, "Oh, like, who texts this?" And then, literally, I think it was sophomore year, and I was in English class, and I remember, yeah, like exchanging numbers with with friends or what have you, and next thing you know, it's like, oh snap, I can't text them back because actually them texting me was already taking up, and sometimes back then I don't know if you remember, como se llama, like even on, well, even social media wasn't as active then, but like you had those chain letters that like, oh, send this to 10 people or you get bad luck for the next 10 years or what have you. And so I remember seeing that. I'm like, yo, like I'm getting like 10 of these. I'm like, that's 10 messages I took away from my 300 that I have for the month or 100 for the month. So man, but yeah, it's interesting, and you're right, like seeing nowadays kids with a brand new phone. Like I barely upgraded my phone. Well, I mean, I upgraded last year, but before that, it had been a couple of years before I upgraded mine.
I think it's I would say the whole concept of poverty and being poor, I guess, has evolved with our times. I guess you asked a question like, did I ever feel poor? I mean, I mean, I don't think I ever felt poor. Not even when I was in Mexico, and in Mexico we didn't really have running water.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever they turn on the water faucets, we had to collect water. So we had to collect water to make sure that we had enough to last us, whether we uh, to drink or for whatever, to shower or whatever
Mm-hmm.
stuff, right? The tinacos. And so I mean, even me being in Mexico, and many people talk about Mexico being a poor country and whatnot, right? I mean, that word was never used, right? My grandfather never said, "Oh, we're poor." I think we were blessed. There was other individuals in Mexico that didn't have as much as I had, but we never labeled them as such, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like poor, poverty, being poor, I think, I mean, it has a negative connotation to it, right? Whenever you label someone poor, that means that you're above them and they're beneath you. And when I was in Mexico, we were all equal, right? Dude, I was the lightest. I was the whitest in Mexico. Everyone else was dark, like dark of every shade. He had,
Mm-hmm.
dark Mexicans, light. I was the they called me the gringo, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I never got sunburned. I'll be outside, but
Must be nice, bro.
everyone was equal. Yeah, bro, I never got sunburned in Mexico. Like never got sunburned. I was still white. White ass, I guess what they say, white ass snow, bro. But yeah, and even even coming to the States, Joe. I mean, my parents never used that word to identify themselves, right? That we're poor with this. I think their perspective and mindset was on giving us what we needed, not what we wanted, right, Joe? And I mean, we
Mhm.
talked a brief on last episode about that, Joe. But I never felt poor. I only realized that I was poor whenever we started applying to colleges, for other scholarships and stuff like that. Like, hey, did you know that according to this, you're poor? And I'm like, well, I mean, I can't consider myself poor because I had a roof over my head. I had, food. I had clothes. I had that was privileged, bro. Like I felt privileged, and I mean, I think we were privileged. I mean, and that's not to exclude the sacrifice that my parents, went through. Because I mean, they struggled. They did all that the work for us to come and just. But no, bro, I never felt poor, bro. Only, of course, right? Only whenever you step into the domain of college and realize, well, damn, dude, you drive a BMW or drive an
Mhm.
Audi to school. Shit, I got my bike.
And even then, like, no, I mean, I remember that, dude. Like, it's just, it's interesting because, like, I mean, and I don't think like I ever had like a view that I was ever like, even if I remember when I was little, like, even the memories that my mom tells me, like, I know there was times, with like, um during Christmas, I remember again, like when I grew up the first 4 years, 3 4 years of my life before, right before my sister was born. We used to live in what I mean, they were called efficiency apartments, right? You open the door and what you saw is what you got, which was like a large room with, you saw the kitchen, the dining, the living room, and even if like even if you could be afforded that, those spaces, right? Nowadays they're called studios or lofts or what have you, but well, also depending on the area where they're at. But so for, I mean, again, for me, like, it was, we always, because we didn't need more. Like, there was nothing, man. Even to the point, even as I got older, even going to high school, like, I never had internet. We never had internet other than AOL, the dial up. Those little free, like, you get free 1,000 hours, and then you would hear the little beeping sounds and what have you. So those, like, even having those, like having that, like, it never, because I mean, my dad, well, his perspective was like, well, we don't need internet. I'm like, well, I guess we don't, because I mean, when I need it, I'll use it at home, or we would go to the library. Sometimes I would remember just like roll up, being outside of the library, or even going inside, to use the computers. Punching your number, waiting 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour on the weekends, what have you. But never really, never thinking like, oh, like those are things that we needed. Never had cable, none of that. But just because, I mean, it wasn't a necessity. My dad would always tell me, like, we always have food, clothes, and what have you. And even growing up, my mom tells me the story where, I used to like little Hot Wheel cars, right? And I mean, back then, Hot Wheel cars were like pretty inexpensive. And so I remember for Christmas, I received, Santa dropped off a big package of like 100 cars. And my mom tells me, like, I was like, oh man, Santa Claus must be rich, because man, I got like like I got 100 cars right here for Christmas. And and without me realizing that, at Family Dollar, they were like $4 or $5. But it was, that perception and understanding that it was never putting a dollar amount to it, or how much we actually had. Just because, I mean, we were happy, we were satisfied. But when we look at how others, how society labeled us, like, we were like, oh, like, your dad only makes X amount of money, that's below the poverty line, or at the poverty line, or what have you, or the amount of people that live in the household. And to your point, it wasn't until you step into that collegiate domain, like that post secondary education, as we're pursuing that, as we realized, oh, I mean, I remember in a class, I had classmates, I had a professor ask me who had access to cable growing up, who had access to internet, who had access to X, Y, and Z. And I would see everybody, like 99% of the classroom rose their hand. The 1% was I. I was the only one that was like, oh, I guess I needed those things. And I was like, oh, I guess. And they asked me like why. I'm like, I mean, at that time I was like, well, I mean, I don't know. And it was like, I guess because we couldn't afford it. But it wasn't that we couldn't afford it, is that there was no need to afford it. There was no need to have it. So it's an interesting dynamic, as we're like trying to stay in college and understanding, because I think in the last episode we talk about, that first year we tried we tried to survive, that first semester, just survive and stay on campus. And so, interestingly enough, like doing that, and then imagining like trying to survive on campus, and then realizing, oh snap, there's no financial support, or we don't have financial support other than financial aid, scholarships, and what have you, that puts a lot of stress to one, and then also to our family members too, because oftentimes we don't want to burden them. But it's interesting just kind of like seeing that dynamic. And so, when you talk about like in college, like seeing your, I guess, other people just driving Beamers and what have you, what was going through your mind? Like, what did you think? Like saying like, oh snap, like I have a bicycle, but this dude is pulling up, or this person's individual is pulling up with a Beamer. Like, what kind of what kind of thoughts kind of ran in your head?
What do we say, Joe? Hijo de papi.
Must
That must be nice, cool,
be
you
nice, hijo
know.
de papi day.
Yeah, I mean, like, I mean, of course, right? We are individuals. We're human, right? We're gonna judge, and it might have been that that individual worked hard for for what he had, right?
Right.
But during those times or of being immature and whatnot, right? Where I was like, damn, dude. I mean, I guess if something happens, right, you have something to fall back
Mm-hmm.
on, and
Yeah.
if something happens financially with me, I have to quit everything and just go back and find a job wherever I can, and I guess community college, right? That's our backup plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to other individuals, right? If financially something happens, I mean, they have a good safety net, right? And that's the whole conversation when we talk about loans too, right, Joe?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we don't know how many of those individuals are comfortable taking those loans because they know that financially they're okay, and they'll be financially stable once they graduate to be able to repay that back, right?
Mm-hmm.
But us being the first of doing everything, Joe, is like we don't see what's gonna happen 5 years from now, right? We're like,
True.
whoa, dude. I mean, if I something happens, I mean, I'm screwed. I'm done with, right? And I think that that hurts us more, because I mean, if we were willing to take those risks, and I mean, I take a big risk whenever I took out that loan for my master's degree, Joe. It was like
Mm-hmm.
what, 30,000, around there, $30,000 from the federal government. And I mean, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have this good job. I wouldn't have this good paying job. But yeah, man, it's just a lot of different things that we're not exposed to,
Mm-hmm.
at a young age, and being afraid of the unknown, being afraid of taking risk, and just being in places that are comfortable to our immediate environment, immediate self. But yeah, dude, just how did you feel whenever, you know,
Well, I mean, well, yeah, like, but to your point though, like, it's like, like going to that comment about like, taking out loans, right? Like, we don't. Oftentimes, I want to say like we didn't grow up in an environment or a sense of seeing a loan as an investment, right? We always like, if you if you took out a loan, is because you needed the money, right? First and foremost, with and but we never tied in like, oh, we need the money because it's an investment for X, Y, and Z. And I think that's the issue that under like that exists a lot right now, especially with our students, because like we have, I mean, even to this day we have this mentality, like, why, even I, like, why do I need a loan, like, I, and because, and for me personally, like, I grew up with a mentality like my father's, because he's the one that engraved it in me, saying like, if you don't have the money, then you don't need it, because if you needed something, you would have saved money for it. I'm like, well, I mean, I guess it's true, but then it's like, well, what happens with emergencies, right? For education, I'm like, I'm not, I'm how is am I, an 18-year-old, going to save 25K a year for my education, to live on campus and go to UT Dallas and what have you, right? And so I think that's an important thing to touch on, that it's that to keep in mind, that like, for especially for any folks that are listening right now, is like, man, like, it's very, those conversations we never had, and I think those are conversations that we really need to have, students and parents, in general, and just in general, seeing that loans not necessarily as a bad thing, but as an investment, especially when it comes to education, because oftentimes, it, because of the lack of those financial resources, maybe the reason, or maybe the an excuse that we may take or use is like, oh, I didn't do X, Y, and Z because I didn't have the funds for it. But best believe we're gonna be the first ones to take out that car, right? Brand new car, like nothing,
show it
and
off.
right, exactly, and it's because we want to make a statement, and part of it is we may need it, but then it's also like, oh, I'm gonna show up my new car, but like, the car definitely ain't paid out, so if we can do that, I think if we change that paradigm thinking, or that thinking in general, of saying like, hey, like, fam, like, it's my education, it's important, and let's explore options. I think
Yeah.
involving parents and students, and even educators, and the advisors and what having those conversations, I think that it's very como se llama, important. And then too, man, like just seeing those folks. I mean, even like from my roommates, I think in college, like I mean, both of them were. I mean, one of them worked for sure. One of my roommates, I always say that he was an engineer, but I'm sure that he was because I knew he worked with hardware. He definitely knew his software. 'Cause I remember one time I had a friend that their USB, como se llama, had like deleted everything, right? You know, like he went bad, and he was trying to do everything he could to make it work. So I knew he was definitely tech savvy and what have you. And I knew that, I mean, and I would hear him stay up late too. Part of it was working, part of it was doing other things and what have you. And my other roommate, I believe, like, his dad just had a really really good job. And and the contrast was, it was funny because both of my roommates, I like, we lived at UTD. Our dorms were como se llama, suite style. So we shared the common area. We had three sinks, and then we have one bathroom and one shower. And so it was and then the rooms right next to each other. So mine was the middle, and so on my right I had one of my roommates that he como se llama, that, like, I remember seeing when his door was open, just walking in, like, it was fully decked out, like it looked like his he was in at home. And then I remember pulling with mine. I had like a trash bag with my stuff, and then I had like little crates with everything. And my mom, my sister helped. And just because, I mean, I was coming from Oak Cliff, so I remember making the drive. So there was no need to put it in suitcase and what have you. We just put it whatever we could and what have you. So thinking of that, como se llama, so just that experience, seeing that, I was like, oh snap, like, well, that's different. Like, I just brought una sábana and a colcha and a pillow and my little stereo, and that's it, and the laptop that I got it on campus and what have you. But again, it wasn't until I hit college that I realized, oh wow, like I can see why, why we were labeled disadvantaged, low socioeconomic background. Because, I mean, I remember, if anything that we wanted, we would work for it. It's like, oh, we just means that we have to pick up extra yards, work an extra day or two, and we would have enough for it and have that. But, like, I guess going back to, like, again, I know the first time we talk about it, like, we realized it is in college. But was any time before that, was there any point where you felt that there were, that either other, like, friends your age or other students your age, whether you were in elementary, middle, or high school, that you felt that it's kind of like they made it seem like, oh snap, like they got more money than I do, or that their family's much more well off than you are at any point?
Well, I mean, I would say since I was in the schools that I attended, throughout the early years, whenever I came and so forth, I think majority of the students were at at an equal playing field in that
Mhm.
regards. I mean, you did have students wearing stuff, and they did it just to, I mean, not to really say they had money, but
Stunt,
just to do it. Yeah, trying to
basically.
stunt. Um, I mean, we attended. I mean, schools in Oak Cliff. I mean, I
No.
attended OK Ha, John F. Peeler. Um, I attended, I mean, from there, W. Griner, and then, Adamson, and then got sent to Kimball, and then came back to Adamson. So, I mean, the whole environment was, I mean, I met a lot of, white folks in the same situation as
Mhm.
I was in regards to being poor. Black folks, the same, brown folks. So I guess I never really had an individual coming in I guess in Audis because an Audi. I think I just learned about an Audi when I was, like a junior, senior year of high school. So between then, they didn't exist to me. And then like the Maseratis as well, I only came to find out about the Maserati whenever we met the CEO of Blockbuster during whatever reception with EIF. But no, Joe, I don't think. I mean, um, I think just we trying to outdo each other, and majority of the time that leads to us hurting ourselves
Yeah.
and wasting unnecessary money on unnecessary things just to not make us better in long term, but just to make other people feel good about us, which is
Yeah.
it's I don't know, Joe. I think that mentality, Joe. Like, there's a lot of individuals that society considers poor, but to me, based on their choices and decisions, I wouldn't categorize them as poor. I would
Yeah.
just categorize them as not really making. those right decisions
Those
and
financial decisions.
financial decision. I mean, that that's always attributed to a lot of different stuff because I mean, what is finance to our people, right?
Mm.
But like, I mean, my grandfather was great at finance. In Mexico, I mean, he owned a store. He managed to get a store during his time. I mean, one of the things that when I was young, I didn't know this, but like my mom afterwards, I mean, she took out loans against her retirement benefits.
Mm.
That's one of the things that she always needed whenever we did um, have some difficulty. When my dad got in an accident, she took out that loan. Whenever we were getting money for me to become a citizen, she took out that loan. So there's different things that my mom did. I mean, my dad was quite the opposite, but I mean, he always was a hard worker. So I mean, he always worked every time he did, whenever he was in full health, and he never backed out with that. So, he was a good worker, so I'm not gonna take that from him. He
Mm.
gave us a lot. He did a lot for us when we were children, Joe. But I guess it's that, Joe. Like right now, I mean, the amount of money that we make, that we earn, Joe. I think we're probably in the top 10% of the United States, Joe. And interesting, so Joe. I mean, I'm pretty sure, like in 4 or 5 years, we're gonna be close to the 1%, right? And we're gonna be hated by everyone, Joe. No, but I think that's a progression of life, Joe. And with poverty, you like, in my opinion, your children shouldn't be poor, right? Um, and I mean, it's a lot of different things and a lot of different systems that we have to look at and understand. And I didn't learn about this until I got my master's degree, right? Because we focus a lot on systems thinking, and when you talk about different systems, that's when you start breaking down different parts of the whole and how they affect X, Y, and Z, right? Short term, long term, etc. And my parents, they sacrificed. I wasn't gonna give the same sacrifices that they did, because they built that foundation for me, right?
Mm.
And I mean, we had this conversation last time, Joe. If I do have kids, right, me morally, I would not send my kids to a public education to take advantage of those resources for the kids, right? To me, like many people do it, Joe, right? You have many, like we said, wealthy families do it. They send their kids to take advantage of the top 10% rule, right? Because if they don't, their kids have to compete, extra. And whenever you talk about that competition, right? I had a conversation with my sister because I sort of kind of forced my medium sister, which the one after me, to go to Lassiter Early College, right?
Mm.
She didn't have the preparations to go to that school, Joe. I mean, like I feel to be successful and competitive in that school, you need to have certain skills, abilities, and what forth, right? And like, just because two people are brown or two people are black, don't mean that they're not a difference that exists, Joe. Like, there's a difference when we talk about class, right? Many individuals that send their kids to early colleges and those schools like that understand the system, right?
Mm.
So a poor kid, well, I guess, a kid that their parents uh, have not been exposed to that system, of
Mm.
course, they're going to fall behind an individual like my kids, right? Like, if I send my kids to any school in Dallas ISD, they're going to outperform anyone, right? They should outperform anyone, right? Great SATs. I mean, when they need money, of course, right? I have a good net. I should have a good net for them to fall back on, Joe. But I mean, just the whole topic of poverty, who's poor, why are they poor? And I mean, those are conversations that we as a whole need to talk about. And like you said, Joe, everyone needs to have a conversation. Not a conversation, a dialogue, right?
Mm.
So if we define the word, dialogue, it's like a flow of meaning, right? So us trying to understand the meaning of the individual instead of just having random conversations about different things. And it's wild, Joe. It's wild.
No, for sure. No, I mean, I mean, I definitely agree because I mean, it's one of it's just oftentimes it's baffling because it's like like going to your point about like how especially like our kids like my son baby Z, he's turning 7 months here at the end of the month, and so but it's interesting. I mean, just thinking in the future, like what, what kind of future we want him to have, right? Whether it's educational background, what are going to be their aspirations in life and what have you. And so, ideally is like, we're like, I think my fiance and I are in agreement that we're going to support whatever he wants to do, right? And whatever
Yeah.
that sense, but at the same time also expose him as much as we can. Now we know, and the reason why we're wanting to do that is because our as the previous generation, which is us, our generation, we may have not had that necessarily that opportunity to be exposed. I know in the last episode we talked about how we were involved, and how long it took us to get involved in extracurricular activities both at the high school and college level, right? It wasn't until our junior senior years that we finally understood the importance, and then finding our niche or finding our comfort zone or comfort level with people that we may relate to, or just people that had the same interests as we did. And so, and again, it was because that first semester was about surviving.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of things that are definitely tied in with poverty and what have you. And I feel like it's also as are the children, as the children of our parents, like our parents tried not necessarily to protect us or to create this bubble around us, but they try to kept it real to an extent with us, right? Like these are, at least my dad did with me, like, every time, again, like I would be able to get, I mean, I always had what we always had what we needed, like shoes and what have you. But what that meant was that my dad was working, construction, rain or shine, he was out there working. My mother in the very early years, I mean, my work ethic. It's funny because I contributed a lot to my dad, but interestingly enough, like my mom, she's the one that also worked when I was very young, between the ages of 4 and 5. Up to that point, my mom was working full-time jobs. So was my dad, and it wasn't until they both came in agreement that it was like, that my dad was making enough to support the family, but that also to find the importance of my mom being at home for us, to be able to have that kind of their nurturing. And I'm so grateful for that because a lot of families are not afforded that. They can't, like, they have to have both parents working. And again, and this is how the cycles, the lack of resources and what have you. So I think there's a lot of things that go into it, and I think we can definitely dive into conversation about this, because we know that, even this is tied into education, to politics and economics, and everything else, right? But to bring it back down, like I think, like, it's important for us to have those conversations, and us as professionals talking to our students and letting them know that, man, that if you want, you can, if you, because se puede, you can do it, going to college and what have you, understanding, and utilizing whatever resources they're available to us, because oftentimes we realize that we may not have all the resources that we want, right? I know that we were there's a lot of things that we just weren't afforded. We, especially at Adamson, right? Like we knew that we could take the SAT, but we didn't know what the SAT was. We need to have preparations, courses to prep us for that. Same thing with the ACT, right? Or our final exams and what have you. And so it's like all of these things, putting them all together, and then realizing that these exams are the culmination of gaining an understanding of if we are ready to go to college and what have you. And then just take it a little bit back to, like, I want to go back to, like, I remember being in middle school. I think the first time, and the reason why I asked you is because, like, for me, like, I think it was the first time I realized that one, the kids, that we know kids are mean, right? I was in middle school. I was in eighth grade, seventh or eighth grade, I forget. I was in, I want to say it was English class where in a portable, and I went to Longfellow, which is around the Inwood area here in Dallas, and como se llama. And I remember going to Longfellow, and there was this kid. He was pretty popular. He was cool with with everyone, and he had his Jordans, and, he had some Nike shirt and whatever, just like really decked out. And I had my, and I think we talk a little bit about it. I was wearing just my Payless shoes, but like I remember like being like scored on for having Payless shoes, and I'm like, I'm an eighth grader, man. Like I'm like, at what age, like, I mean, obviously, like, now not all of us have a full time job, right? As an eighth grader, because one, the laws existed for that not to happen.
Yeah.
But I remember going home and realizing, like, man, like, okay, like, what is it gonna take for me to have some name brand clothing? Okay, at that time, K Swiss was also popping, so I talk about my famous K Swiss, my white and red, and with red suede, and my white on white K Swiss. And so at the time, I remember that I had to pay 90, $100 for them, But I knew that I wasn't gonna go over to my dad and ask him or my mom like, hey, I need $100 for shoes. I knew that because I knew that it meant that my parents would have to work harder. But then also that was also under the assumption that my dad was gonna buy them or tell me like, why do you have shoes? They're perfectly fine. Why do you need these specific ones? And so I remember like just working that rest of the spring even more just to save up money and asking my mom to take me to Foot Locker. And she was like, "Why? Those shoes are expensive." I'm like, "I know, but I want to buy me some stuff." And I remember buying me an outfit that I dropped, I don't know, maybe like 150, almost $200 on, as an eighth grader. And this was my money that I earned pushing a lawnmower with my dad. And so I remember showing up back to school, and they were like, "Oh snap! Look at Posada, look at Joe, like okay, fresh out with the K Swiss, the nice jeans and the shirt and todo eso." And I remember just having like just talking to him. I'm like, well, how much does your shoes cost? And he's like, well, my mom spent X, Y, and Z. How much those jeans cost? Well, my dad spent X, Y, and Z. And that shirt, well, my brother, gave it to me for my birthday. So in my head, I'm like, cool. Like, your family wants to ensure that you have access these type of clothing, right? Like, or at least what you want, right? Like these name brand. And I'm like, well, I bought the shoes, I bought this outfit myself, realizing that I wanted them, and I knew that I had to work for that. And so, and I'm kind of grateful for that I got scored on, because like then that later down the road, like why do I need to stunt? Why do I need to pretend, that I have things when I mean, if I wanted them, obviously we could, but we were just gonna work a little bit harder for it. But there was no need for it, because I mean, again, at that time in being in eighth grade, like it wasn't that important for me. And then I knew that when I came back to Adamson, or when I started Adamson, like it was a different ball game, just because the kids at Longfellow were also a different type of. At the first, they weren't even part of my what is it called? ¿Cómo se llama? The feeder pattern. Because I went to James Boo in Oak Cliff, and then from there, the middle school should have been, I think, Reiner también, and then ultimately would have been Adamson, at least for my area. But I ended up moving, and so my middle school was Bott Story, and then Roosevelt was my home school, which is down like again in Oak Cliff. And so como se llama, so just making those changes, I realized like, man, like there was no point, because then we go to college, and then and no one cares how you look. Like I remember seeing memes, and it was like, oh, like freshman year, everybody's all dressed up and everything. Sophomore year, you're semi-dressed with brand name y todo eso. Junior year, man, you don't care. And then senior year, students are showing up in pajamas to class or to exams, But it's just interesting, that type of engagement students have across even their early como se llama education, in elementary, middle, or high school, and then post secondary as well. So it's just an interesting um just como se llama, like thing to think about when you're like, man, like am I poor, and realizing, because I mean it wasn't for me even then when I was in college, when I was actually working. I started commuting, like I remember como se llama, being, it was like, man, I want to say maybe the first fall, so it would have been what, December, or first Christmas 2010. Like I couldn't say that I was poor. I couldn't say that I was broke either, because I had just purchased my house with my dad, right? So I had a home, I had a vehicle to get to point A to point B. I was working on campus and doing landscaping. But I remember looking at my bank account. I remember one time I had to go to UTD, so which was a 30-minute drive. I had my remember my Yukon. So
Oh.
having the Yukon is a V, right? The black Yukon is a V8, so it's a gas guzzler. And I remember I had to pump gas, so I was pumping gas to get to campus and come back. Not even a minute in pumping gas, like it just stops. And I'm like, okay, so I got like maybe 7-8 bucks in, and then I get a notification on my phone saying like, oh, you got a overdraft fee for Chase. And I was like, why? And then I look at it, I'm like, oh, I got negative $38, no, or negative 40, which is $35 overdraft fee plus another whatever I spent on gas. And then I was like, oh snap, I don't got money. I don't got. I'm in paycheck is not until at the end of the week. And then coming home, and then like my house, the back of my room was like, the back of the house was like really bad with insulation. And I remember being cold, and I'm like thinking, can I afford to turn the heater on, right? But then like now looking, reflecting back to that, I'm like, yeah, like I was struggling at that point because I was not managing my finances like I should have. Because best believe the weekend before that, I was probably out. We were what at 01 maybe at
Why
some
you gotta
point.
say we, Joe? Why do you have to say
I mean,
we?
I hypothetically
No,
speaking,
yeah, I mean,
no,
I'm sure we were.
just
I'm sure we
right,
were.
just different things like, it was, and it was the first time I was like, with all that freedom on campus or even living on my own. Like I was exploring and just out there and what have you. But it's just like but I just wasn't making sound financial choices.
Yeah,
And so and so now as adults we see that like, oh, budgeting is very very important. Especially if you want to purchase a new home, purchase a new vehicle, pay off in debt, pay down your debt or pay it off and what have you. And so it's just como se llama, we say all of that. I say all of that just to say that like not once in our lives have we like we've had everything down, and it's like just realizing like, okay, like these are the smart decisions we have to do, especially when it comes to finances.
Joe. No, like I mean, like I said earlier, everything is an evolution of stuff, right, Joe? I mean, what do we expect? Whenever we come to a new country, I mean, what do we expect to be? Have what I guess the individuals that been here attain like overnight. I mean,
Hmm.
it's just like I mean that's for me. I mean, I feel like you know everything comes and goes, right?
Yeah.
Eventually, my generation is probably gonna end up in zero again, right? I mean, who knows if my generation is gonna be able to, see many years to come with all this, uh, things we're doing with the environment. It's just, but I do feel things are, they evolve. We evolve. We do good things here. I mean, we take advantage of different things as we get older, as it should, right? And
Mm.
one of the things that I always like to try to remove is to label every black person, every brown person, every white person as such, right?
Mm.
Because you have rich and poor of either race and people in between. And my parents came to this country illegally, they say, without documentation. Some of those words are not used anymore, but they came here without documentation in a foreign land, right? They came here to better their lives. They didn't have anything to their name, but they were able to build, in their eyes, a fortune, right? In a lifetime, yeah, in my parents' generation, in a lifetime, their children have been able to achieve and attain just right now. I mean, the PhD is coming whenever God wants me to, but a master's degree, Joe, right? Their kids have been, I would say, well off, right? Success in their own domain, right? And to me, I mean, a house, like you said, at an early age, all right? Things that many individuals in the news say that people like us can't, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that if you keep repeating to our minority population that they're poor, 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 they themselves will start believing and be poor in mind, right? And whenever you're poor in mind, Joe, the system owns you, Joe. Like you will be poor, your kids will be poor until someone breaks their mindset. Like say, hold on, this is temporary, right? And I mean, it costs us a lot, Joe, emotionally, physically, spiritually, it costs us a lot. But I mean, as we're talking to the audience, Joe, I think that we are in a good space,
Mm-hmm.
and we're continuing, evolving, growing. Like you said, learning about finance, dude. My wife, she guides me on that because I mean, she's good at finances, Joe, and she makes sure that I stay as true to that.
That's good.
And with everything else, Joe, I mean, I think with health, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think we were healthy, eating what we used to eat. I feel
Yeah.
as we get
20 McChickens
older,
and 20
like,
McDoubles.
bro, 20 McChickens. That's a story for some other time, Joe. 20. Who the hell orders 20 McChickens?
That is definitely a story to
Uh,
come from us for sure.
no, Joe, but like I feel we grow, Joe. We grow, and we need to give that hope to our kids. Like I feel like
Hmm.
we don't give them that genuine hope that they deserve. I think we instill in fear in them. I think we tell them basically that this world hates you, that this world is gonna eat you alive, and that there is no hope because X, Y, and Z, right? And we cannot change nationally, um, right away, but I mean we can do locally, Joe. And
Mm-hmm.
like what we're doing, hopefully, we're able to impact more individuals through this. Because I mean, at the end of this, one of the things that we're trying to do, we're trying to share our story, and like you always say, Joe, our story is it's not unique. I mean, our story, we're mirrors of everyone, those that are our listeners, but many of the students that we serve, right? And I say serve because we as individuals that been through those shoes should give back to those individuals that are currently in that stage. So
Mm-hmm.
many of us, we, well, I mean, there's different things that I dislike and like, right? Whenever people like us make it, we become labeled as they are the, see that word left me now. Jesus Christ, Joe, that word left me. Like they are the something to the rule, exception to the rule,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when you label individuals as the exception to the rule, you diminish everything that they've gone through. And I don't think we need to stop doing that, Joe. Like, oh, you made it. Oh, you're an exception to the rule.
Well, I
Or your
mean,
poverty don't count. Your
well,
struggles don't
well, I mean,
count.
even to your point, like I've like, especially recently within the last couple of years, especially when you and I have had the opportunity to work together, for the same institution and even working in the same role of education. Like I felt after you and I have people have seen us like work together, understanding that we work really well together, right? And we don't necessarily have to have the same boss, even work for the same institution. They realize like, oh, like we need two guys to come and do. We need two folks to do X, Y, and Z. Like, oh, we can count on Joe and Cleto. And I've heard that. I've heard people tell me like, oh, well, you just the exception to the rule. And I'm like, so wait, so you're saying that what I accomplished is like, oh, okay, so I guess I'm just an exception. So what I did means nothing, and I accomplished nothing, right? And you're right. Like and now as I'm hearing you say it out loud, like it makes me realize, like, dang, like that's literally what they're saying. They're saying that no, you're just an exception to it, man. Don't worry about it. Like you were meant to succeed. And I'm like, so what was it meant for us? Were we meant to struggle so bad our first semester that we wanted to drop out? Were we meant to go through everything that we did, right? And I think that in itself is another conversation that we could definitely have in the future. But you're right, man. Like I'm glad you brought that up.
No, but I mean that's important, and then from that, individuals like us, we have the heart to serve. We have the heart to help those individuals that were in our shoes, right? I mean, like I said, I mean, those that have read my book and those that haven't, I mean, if you want to know a little bit background of me, I mean, go buy the book, Amazon. Got to throw that in there. Who am I becoming? But I mean, that's our duty, Joe. That's our duty to give back to those that are lost, confused, don't understand the system. And I feel many individuals like us take advantage of those individuals for personal gain.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, like, I know I'm not going to get rich off being in education, dude, but people do get rich off being in
Yep.
education. Like, dude, how in the hell are you getting six figures while the community you say you serve is still quote unquote poor? Like, I don't get it. Like, I feel like that transaction has to be mutual, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you progress in life, those people that you serve need to progress in life as well. And if the people you serve are not progressing, then you're not in it for the right things. But yeah, dude, like I don't know, like I mean, in society now, I mean, going back to what you said is, I mean, people attribute me being a man, right? Oh, just because you're a man. Like I mean, we hear that. Oh, just because you're lighter skinned. And I mean, those are different conversations for other points, Joe. But I think we need to stop diminishing the success of others, right? And I read it was on LinkedIn, an individual, a young lady, shared about, her success, right? That many women do not share the successes that they do. And I feel it's because of that as well, right? There's a lot of course, right, stereotypes, a lot of constraints that we, through, things we limit them, whenever we see a woman, we limit them, right? And, I've worked for many bosses that have been women and powerful women, right? I have a lot of friends, and I think we need to uplift anyone and everyone that we know has struggled. And if they had success, let's be happy for them. If
Mm-hmm.
they own a business, starting a business, let's be happy for them.
And
If they're
support them.
doing anything that goes against what society has or labels us, let's be grateful for them. I mean, we when we were kids, and I said that, I'm gonna repeat that, Joe, is that we are envious of each other. And as we get older, right, we get more aware and attuned to with ourselves and with society and our role. But we just can't forget, to give back and to be happy for individuals. I mean, stop being jealous. I mean, what is jealous gonna do to you, right? I mean, just be happy for you. If a person gets a PhD, like, dude, congratulations, you're part of that, 0.05% or whatever percent of, you know, uh, um, Hispanic or Latino
Hispanic,
individuals,
Latinx, yeah,
bro.
Latinos, Chicanos.
It's just, I mean, be happy for our people, Joe, and we need to be happy for our people. It's just like sometimes we're happy for others that are not our people, and that's great. But dude, I mean, we have so much barriers ahead of us. I mean,
For
let's
sure.
not diminish ourselves, diminish that.
And
But
there's so many obstacles that we as individuals and as people, as community, as como se llama, being a person of color, being brown, being a Chicano, being a first generation, there's a lot of things that we are already overcoming. And then como se llama, and then at the same time we still are have to be at the table, or we're still at the table. And I want to end with this type of note that, I would always, and I was at fault this when early in my career too, I would always hear, oh, we need more, um let's say for example, I said, oh, we need more Joes and more Anacletos. And I'm like, actually, and I was always say, yeah, I agree, we need more Joes and more Anacletos. But I'm like, now, like, no, like, we don't. Joe, we both of you and I, we have accomplished so much, right? We went to Adamson, and despite all odds, we graduated the panzazo, pero, or if we did well, we graduated, we went off to college. You went to A&M, I went to UT Dallas. We finished our degrees, our undergraduate degree. And then at that, even at that, we continued on to pursue our master's degrees, right? And we managed to pull that through. We've managed to find a full time job, managed to become homeowners at an early age. We're managing, como se llama, building a family with our significant others and our partners, right? Your wife and my fiance, and supporting them in what they're doing, right? And yet I don't want another Joe out there. I don't want to see another Anacleto out there, because we're just the floor to our students. Like, if anything, like, we want to set the expectation that we want them to be whatever they want to be, and be their own individual. They shouldn't have to look up to me or think about, like, oh, I have to become like Joe. Like, no, you have to be better than me, because we did it without having a somewhat structured support system, or even people to look up to, right? Or even mentors at an early age. Como se llama, at least when we're engaging our students. And so for that, I tell them, like, no, you have to be better than me. Like, not because you're going to go out and say, oh, I'm better than Joe and better than, no, no, like, you're saying because, oh, because I studied Joe. I studied what he did. This is what he did right. This is what he did wrong. And this is, and not to say that it's going to stop them from doing anything right or wrong, but it's like they're coming with the mentality of, like, okay, so this is how I can help navigate that. And then they become to themselves. And so, and I've always thought about, like, oh man, like, when they said another Joe, I'm like, I felt, that was like a little bit of my pride. But I'm like, no, like, as long as I don't need another Joe out there. We need whatever that person is, or the Luis, Alejandro, Alejandra, whatever it is. Like, we need them to be them themselves and their individual person, to bring their unique story, experiences, and embrace it, love it, and hit the ground running with it, and do whatever it is that they need to do. And along the way, if we can help, great. Like, how can we help, and how can we help them navigate that, the experience after high school, or during high school, and then afterwards, and for them to ultimately be successful. Because you're right, we need to empower other Latinos, other Chicanos, other Mexican Americans. We need our own people, our own raza. We need to support them, and,
our
and push
women,
them. Yeah, empowering women, for sure, man. Like, my two last names, Posada, Triana. I always wanted to keep Triana, because that comes from my mom's last name. But come to find out, both of my last name, Posada, comes from my grandma, and she kept her mom's last name. And so understanding that, it's like, it's like, oh snap, like, it's like both of my last names are represent two very strong women, because my grandma on my dad's side raised my father and my uncles by herself. She didn't have no man out there. Like, she was like, nah, like, they're my priority. My mom, sacrificed so much to for me to be where I'm at today. And man, so and my sister, she's doing so much more than I will ever be able to do, and that's good. And we need to empower. And you're right, we need to empower everyone, and especially our women, and within our raza, and everyone just in general too, just to push them to do more and be more. Because I mean, I think setting the expectation that they can and they will, and they sure will. They'll keep pushing forward with that. Do you have anything else, bro,
No, I mean,
for
yeah,
today?
yeah, yeah, Joe. Just we need to remove from trying to group everyone into one category. I mean, we are our individuals, Joe.
Y sí, so así estamos. So again, thank you all for listening. This has been episode 6 of Between Two Borders. Thank you all for tuning in to como se llama, to just listening to us. Hopefully you're enjoying these stories, and actually here soonish we're gonna start having a couple of guest speakers come joining us. But bro, how can folks find us on social media, or listen to us on other social media platforms, to drop that plug in there here?
Hey, I mean, you can find us on Spotify, as I said, right, Joe? Spotify.
Spotify,
Uh,
Spotify.
between Spotify, between two borders. Our YouTube, is between two borders as well. That's where we post our recordings, so you can see our face, see who you're listening to. On Instagram, between two borders as well. Everything's between two borders.
Can't miss
uh,
us.
can't miss it. And our individuals. I mean, it's just our name. I mean,
Yeah.
Anacleto, Giovanni Contreras, and
And
you
then
know
Joe underscore Posada. You can find us on Instagram, whatever it is. And then hopefully engage us. Let us know what you think, good, bad, and the different. And we're hoping here soon where we're going to start having some special guests join us. So again, so I think that's all we have, ¿verdad, for today?
that's it, Joe. That's it.
Alrighty. Well, thank you very much. And yeah, enjoy the rest of y'all's day.
Deuce,
Adios.
deuce. Bye bye.